proud to be supported by Diamond Bright, protecting, cleaning and caring for the Furious fleet and for yours with 10% off using code FD10. Follow the links in the description below. Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today we're going to look at the Rover 75's immediate descendant, the sporty, thuggish MG ZT, and find out, is it more than just a body kit and big wheels, or is there something fundamentally different and perhaps even better than the standard 75? Quick word from our sponsors while you hit like and subscribe. Now on with the review. Now I just want to pause to remind you all to stay safe out there, because it's a dangerous galaxy and you've really got to know where your towel is, or more usefully, as far as your online world is concerned, that someone has got your back. That's where Surfshark comes in. It's a VPN, or virtual private network, which masks your online activity even from your own internet provider. And because your data is concealed, even potentially dodgy public Wi-Fi hotspots are safe to use. That cute coffee shop might seem lovely, but someone less than lovely could be using their unlocked Wi-Fi router as an open door into your device and your personal details. And as identity theft is one of the biggest crimes against individuals, you really shouldn't be taking that kind of risk. And it's not just security. If you've hitched your way around the world and want to keep up with your favourite TV show from back home, or find TV that's not available where you live, you can virtually log in from around the globe to stream the shows that you want from the streaming services in the countries that you want. And it gets better. Surfshark also includes a security suite with antivirus, search and Surfshark Alert, which monitors your personal data for potential security breaches and sends you real-time alerts, helping you to further protect yourself from identity theft. So hit the link in the description and try it for yourself for 3 months, and use my code FURIOUSSHARK for an extra 3 months free, risk-free, with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Now, back to the video. Hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and today I've brought my beloved Rover 75 down here to Sussex to meet a friend, because back in 2001, after BMW had divested itself of Rover and all their interests, the new MG Rover consortium needed to do something different, interesting. They needed to bring a sports car into the range. They brought out the Z range, and most notably, of course, the ZT. But could they legitimately go from a cloth cap to a baseball cap and not turn it into a Halfords accessory aisle pastiche? Let's find out. Now, the 75 really had been the best car in Rover's lineup. But as the cars changed over to the new Z range, there was a bit of a conflict in personality. The ZS and the ZT were pretty believable because they were already sold to a younger market, they were dynamically pretty good, and they were the kind of people who would perhaps go and stick modifying things on them anyway. It wasn't unusual to see a lowered 200. However, you never saw a lowered 75, so the idea of taking a 75 as designed by Richard Woolley with its wood and its chrome and its sepia dials and turning it into something that was a bit more aggressive, how well was it actually going to sit? Because honestly, it's a completely different demographic, it's a completely different style, but Rover, or MG Rover, had no money to do anything to the sheet metal. It was all going to be plastic and suspension to make the thing change. Now fortunately, Richard Woolley's design, although it was quite genteel in the final product, it was actually quite an aggressive and very sleek design. The quad headlamps, the long low bonnet and the sweeping lines were actually very effective for converting to something more sporting. However, there were lots of trim details that weren't. So MG Rover brought in a couple of specialists to change things up. Externally, they brought in Peter Stevens, who's notable for designing the Lotus Elise and the McLaren F1. With the help of the plethora of design consultancies who Rover had kind of amalgamated across the country, he set to work to change the exterior styling as significantly but as cheaply as he possibly could. So things changed all around. Most notably though was the chrome. We still do have the chrome door handles, which you can't do anything about because you need door handles to get into a car, but significantly the chrome work around the 75 is everywhere. It's on the side of the wings, it's in the bumpers, it's even on the bottom of the doors. MG couldn't have that, so they took the most direct step they could think of, the most cost-effective step, to paint it. So the owner of this car loves the fact it has these beautiful red details. However, he doesn't go near a car wash or a jet wash with this car, just in case the paint falls off. Now the front of the car was already suitably aggressive with these lovely eyebrows. I mean, back in the early noughties, you could buy eyebrow kits to fit onto your car, not Rover 75s obviously, to make them look more aggressive and have this very, very look. However, they did need to make a few different changes because, for one thing, there's a rumour that I've heard a few times that this indicator here is quite low down in the bumper, and this was allegedly the lowest point that you could legally sign off on a new car with your front indicator, which meant there was no scope for a sports version of the 75 because lowering the suspension would have put that indicator down too low. So obviously when the new bumper arrived, apart from painting the chrome bits, obviously the indicator was able to move up slightly, We've got redesigned fog lights, we now got these lovely mesh inserts, and this grille, incredibly, you'll recognise this name, was designed by Harris Mann of all people. So the guy did some good work all over the place. And of course the other thing which makes a big difference to the look of the front of the car are these staring, angry xenon headlights, which would look so nice on the 75, wouldn't they? Now, stepping inside the ZT, things again are much more modern and fresh than the 75. Now, obviously, they couldn't change the basic architecture of the dashboard, but they could lose the pipe and slipper sepia effect and make it feel a lot more modern. There's only one trim level across the entire range at launch, but you've got two choices in terms of what the car was actually trimmed with. There's either Matrix, which is a checkerboard fabric insert, or like this car, we've got Pleather, which is two-tone fake leather bolsters, which look rather nice. And it's actually body coloured as well, so we've got red inserts and red tinted fabric on here. But the big thing they've done is to change all the materials. So instead of the real wood, which was just going away at the time this car was launched, anywhere there was wood, we've now got a satin metal effect. The steering wheel, instead of being the wood and half leather, is fully black perforated leather, and we've got a much more bold looking centre boss with the MG logo in it, of course. And notably, the dials. We're not looking at sepia dials anymore, we're now looking at silvery white effect things, which look very, very racing, very modern, very exciting and fast, of course. And moving into the centre of the car, we've got a lovely short throw gear shift with a perforated leather gaiter and a nice little round perforated leather ball on top, which looks absolutely fantastic and feels much sharper, in fact, than the 75s. But a lot of the 75 favourite things do remain. We have got these extra little funny cubbies all over the place, and we have got the fantastic Star Trek shaped interior light, which is my favourite thing on the entire interior of the car. Oh, that sounds nice. Oh, that gearbox is a lot lighter as well. This is my actual first ever drive of the ZT variant of the Rover 75. This has actually belonged to a friend Batch for a little while. I've never had a chance to meet up and compare the two cars. This is actually quite exciting. Now, what makes this a really good comparison is that this, like all of the early ZTs, is a V6. Initially it only came, well, one trim level and two variants of the V6. Oh, first corner, let's see what we think. Oh, that gearbox is so much lighter. Wow, this feels very different indeed. This feels more like a proper sports saloon rather than the heaviness of the 75. And as I was saying, the engines, there were two versions of the V6. It's the same KV6 basically as you find in the 75, but they had changed the map for the 190, they put a bigger inlet manifold, bigger air filter, changed the camshaft profile, so they all had the potential to make 190, but they mapped them at 160 and 190 horsepower, so there's two different levels. And the 160 could be bought for under £20,000, which made it a really exciting price point. However, when the 1.8 turbo was introduced, that produced virtually the same amount of power, same acceleration, very similar top end, but a lighter nose and much, much better fuel economy. So that became the one to have, and the 160 V6, which we have here, was then dropped in favour of that. Now, that, as my 1.8 turbo is a 1.8 turbo, this is a direct replacement comparison. Now, the big deal is that many people might have looked at the ZT and thought, well, basically it's just a body kit and bigger wheels, but there was fundamentally far more to it. MG Rover brought in a guy called Rob Oldacre. He'd been with Rover previously. I think he'd headed up some of their motorsport work as well. He was a very, very talented engineer. And not only that, when BMW was still in charge of Rover, they'd made sure that Rover couldn't tread too heavily on the toes of their own products. So although BMW had funded the development of the Tourer, it wasn't allowed to go into production because they felt it might hurt sales of the 3 Series Tourer. And likewise the Rover 75 Sport, which had been developed and then mothballed. And of course the Rover engineers had kept on doing a bit of skunk works, development work on the sports version of the 75 as well, in the hope that one day they'd be approved. So when they were given the green light, everything was ready to go. And it was a lot to make it the perfect fast sports car. Oh, that does sound very, very nice with the V6. That is the difference. It might not be much faster, if any faster at all, but that sound does make it feel like a much more aggressive thing. Now, the performance and handling. This is where things do differ significantly. Already, I can feel how much lighter this car feels on its wheels. Now, the 75 only had 15-inch wheels on it, so it always looked a little bit smaller and old-fashioned. But moving up to the 16 or 18-inch wheels, which they found on this car, it visually makes the car look significantly more modern. And of course, they increased the wideness of the track as well, so it's more planted on the road. They changed the steering rack, so it's fewer turns lock to lock. They've changed the action of the gear shift, so it's a much lighter gear change, which is very, very welcome indeed. And then there's the suspension. It's the same fundamental suspension as the 75. It's the McPherson struts at the front and the BMW Z-axle at the back. Now, it had taken a fair degree of work to make the Z-axle work on a front-wheel drive car for one thing, but also on a softly sprung feeling car as well. This is taking it back to where it was intended to be. That increased the damper stiffness by 70%. That is just vast. 70% at the front and a little bit more at the back. I think I heard 77 earlier, which is a ridiculous amount more stiffness. It's a little bit lower. It's very hard to quantify how far, and I can't find any information anywhere as to how much lower. Maybe it's an optical illusion, maybe it's not lower, but it certainly looks like it's lower when they're side by side. And this is quite a big one, which I was very surprised to find out. The subframes that hold all the suspension to the car, on the 75, that uses rubber mounts. On this car though, aluminium, so it's solid mounted under the car. And that means there's less movement, everything is sharper, everything is tighter. The car just feels so planted. It's a completely different animal. You can see why it was very well regarded by the motoring press. My friend who owns this car is actually a motoring journalist of some repute, so if the motoring journalists of the world are choosing to buy these with their own money, you know they're onto something good. It does help that BMW had been so fastidious in their overseeing of the 75 project. One of the things they had insisted on was the stiffness of the shell. It was, well, ridiculously stiff, it has to be said. And that meant the car was better in a crash and of course better on the road. And when they came to go and do this later on, an unexpected consequence was really how good it is. Driving around, the ambience is completely changed as well. The lack of wood in the interior makes the car feel like a completely different place. The sport seats hold you completely differently. They are very, very buckety and cosseting, whereas the 75 seats are intentionally designed to throw back to look like the Rover P6 seats from the 60s and 70s. These are meant to look very, very contemporary for the early noughties. It does have a slight jitter to it, as anything with very stiff suspension will do. It does still feel pliant, it still feels comfortable. It rolls enough through a corner to feel, you know, just a pleasant place to be. It doesn't feel like it's an out-and-out sports car that's doing its best to shake your fillings out and hurt you. It's just a nice thing to be in. You do have the same restricted rear view, of course. That's never going to go away. And this particular car is actually very special indeed. It's a 460th earliest known car, I believe. It's on a Y reg, so very, very early, and very few cars were registered on a Y plate. It's only got 67,000 miles on it, and very few owners indeed. My friend does take incredible care of it because he dotes on it like I dote on my 75. And this does give you such incredible confidence as you barrel into a corner. You just feel like the car is gonna grip all day. It's not gonna let go. It's gonna have your back, basically. When you're in thug mode, it makes you want to put your foot down, drop a gear, and just enjoy the incredible planted grip the car seems to have. But as my friend says, because the KV6 is a little bit of a lazy unit, it doesn't always encourage you to do that. So you do, to a certain extent, wander about, pootling around the place as if you were just driving a regular 75. I think the soundtrack does make you think perhaps you're driving faster than you actually are. But I have to say, those changes that have been made to the car utterly transform it. And I'm going to be honest, I do prefer this a lot to the 75. This just feels so much sharper. Now, during an interview about the development of the 75, I think it was Richard Woolley, the designer, actually said that one of the design parameters they'd set themselves along with BMW was to create the best front-wheel drive saloon car in the world, and combine the sportiness of this and the comfort of the 75. I think they did a pretty good job. Now, I've really found this fascinating to feel the difference from a 75 driver's perspective. Now Batch has never driven a 75, having owned this for some time, so let's put him in the 75 and see what he thinks of that and see if he can really tell the difference in the other direction. So now, this is my friend Batch, one of the few people who have a one-word name that's not preceded by a the.
Yes, well, I've been called many one-word names in my time, Matt, but
yes.
yeah, I know. Yeah, it's very kind of you, thank you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, this is quite different from yours, isn't it?
Yeah, do you know what, amazingly, I have never, ever driven a Rover 75, even though I've been mad about them since they first came out. British Motor Show 1998.
Yep.
I was a child, and I've been fascinated by them, but I've never driven a 75.
That is quite shocking.
And you've never driven a ZT?
No, this is my first day, my first time driving a ZT, so this has been very exciting. Considering both are motoring journalists for quite a while, this is quite a...
Whoa, what was that? Is that Radio 2? Is that what you listen to in your Rover 75, Radio 2? I thought it'd be a Radio 4.
I do have Radio 2 in there. I actually have an FM transmitter listening to my phone.
Right then, should we go for it?
Yeah,
then?
let's see what you think. Okay. So I'm fascinated because I thought the ZT was totally different.
Oh dear.
It's really heavy and boggy, isn't it, compared to...
That's because I put it in third gear.
Oh, that'll do it.
You see, I'm used to a tighter gear gauge in the ZT, you see.
Cool. Yeah, it's
totally
a much shorter...
different.
Yeah, it's a much shorter throw in the ZT.
Yes.
That short throw gearbox. I reckon it's about, the gear knob is about half the height, I think, the gear lever.
Do you think so? Well, yeah, I mean, this feels like a massive stick.
It really is,
to my,
yeah.
Wow.
Very different.
The first thing, we've got to talk about the seats, I think.
Yes.
The seats, because I was sitting in I hope you don't mind, but I was sitting in here whilst you were taking my ZT out. And I've driven lots of cars in my time, very lucky to have driven lots of cars. And I have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, this is the most comfortable car. And I've been lucky enough to drive all sorts of lovely posh things, Rolls Royces and Bentleys and what have you. This is the most comfortable car I've ever sat in.
That's high accolade. But it is, I do agree, it is astonishingly comfortable.
It is. And also, that's another thing that has I've noticed, it feels a lot smaller in here.
Do you know what it does? I'd not noticed
and
that, but you're right, it does.
I don't know whether that's because of all the different colours and materials, because in my car it's just all grey.
It's shades of grey, yes.
Whereas because we've got all the lovely textures, the lovely bits of materials used, and of course different colours, I mean different colours of the plastic as well.
Yeah, with lots of contrast.
It actually feels, I don't know, it feels smaller and more cosy. And I suppose I don't want to trot out that cliche, you're sitting in a gentleman's club,
but we are.
It feels very cosseting and very welcoming, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Yeah, the ZT is very much...
Sorry, I just had to do that.
Oh,
I put the lights on because you get that warm glow,
brilliant,
don't you?
yeah,
as if you're sitting in front of the fire.
Yeah, it really is, yeah. You're in a nice pub somewhere.
Oh, it's
a
lovely.
Country pub. Yeah, the other one is, yours is very like a Atomic Kitten, early noughties.
It is, yes. I do think of myself as Atomic Kitten when I'm driving it, of course.
I do, yeah. People do generally, actually.
Yes, But yeah, so it feels smaller, but also not only are the seats comfortable, but you sit up higher as well.
You're on rather than in.
It's a totally different driving position, actually. Because I think in the ZT you sit lower, and it exaggerates the size of the steering wheel. The steering wheel feels enormous in the ZT.
It does, it feels very in your face, doesn't it?
Yes, whereas here it feels the right size. So
yeah. But I wonder if the height of the seat is perhaps why it feels smaller, because you pushed more into the car itself.
Possibly, yes. Yeah. But I mean, the suspension does have an enormous bearing on the driving experience, obviously, and that was one of the reasons why they changed it so severely for the ZT. But it does float down the road, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not like you're going to barrel into a corner. It can go quickly around a corner.
Have you tried?
Yes, I have.
How does that end up? Was that all right?
It was all right. It really does grip well. You're basically like in a Rover P6. You're literally scratching paint off the door handles.
Yes.
But it goes around the corner and grips surprisingly well.
Yes. So the V6, to me, it's a big part of the whole driving experience, that V6, and I can understand why they only launched it initially with the V6 engines, because if you're going to build like a sports saloon like that,
you want the halo effect, don't you?
Although it does make me laugh that particular engine's only got 160 horsepower. But if you think back to it, now we laugh, don't we? We laugh at 160 horsepower. but 20 years ago,
that was a big deal, wasn't
I mean,
it?
that was just more than adequate. And
Well,
if you wanted to give your saloon car a bit of extra performance, the natural thing to do was to put a V6 in it. You think of Vauxhall and Ford,
the
what have you.
Vectra and the Mondeo, yeah.
But this, the 1.8, you can see why this engine, obviously in a different state of tune, but this engine replaced my 160 V6 because it delivers. Well, I think this feels a lot quicker than mine.
Do you think so?
I think it feels a lot quicker.
That's interesting. This feels heavier, but I think the acceleration feels very, very similar.
Do you think it feels heavier? Because turning into a corner back there, not that we're barreling at all, but if I think it feels lighter at the front end than my car, actually.
Well, so it doesn't have the same kind of plow-on effect. The understeer is less noticeable in this one, but it's just the weight of the turning the steering wheel and the feeling of weight on the suspension as a whole.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But yeah,
it is such a lovely view out there.
Oh, it is,
especially with the little chrome around the
little details,
the dials.
The antique looking.
Yeah,
clock.
As if it's some kind of 90. Because of course, in the late 90s, apparently, I don't know because I was only a child, Matt.
All right.
But apparently, like 1930s and 1940s clock watches were very in fashion. In the late 90s, apparently.
The Cartier,
and so this is sort of like a reference to that. But
yeah, it was going back to. There was a particular Rover model, I think they. Kind of based
I can't take my eyes off them. They're so lovely.
Well, do look up. There's a corner.
We'll go barreling in.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the thing, though, wasn't it? Because you got the Mini, the Beetle, the Thunderbird, the PT Cruiser.
Yes. It really was. It was a weird period, really, wasn't it? Because you would think everyone was looking forward to the millennium and looking forwards, and yet everybody, especially with the S-Type, and I don't think the S-Type, in my opinion, the pre-facelift one, the original of the new S-Types, hasn't dated very well at all. And I think the Rover, I think the 75 does look like a proper classic now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's really aged very well. Yeah, because I think at the time you had two camps of people who liked either the Jaguar or the Rover. Yes. The same motor show, wasn't it?
Yes. And as I'm sure all your viewers know, the Rover, the production process was sped up. It was catalysed. They put it into fast forward, didn't they? To hit that. Because they heard the S-Type was going to come out at the show, and they wanted to steal a little bit of the S-Type's thunder, which they did.
Yeah,
but of course, the problem that arose then was because they built it too soon. They couldn't put it into production quickly enough, could they?
Combined with the speech that killed it.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, everyone assumed there were problems behind the scenes, but really it was just pre-production cars only at the time.
Yes.
Very sad.
Yeah. So I suppose all of this, is it actually making you sort of regret wanting to sell this car?
Very much so, although it's making me want to go and buy a ZT though.
Well, mine's not for sale yet.
No. Well, maybe when you do come to sell it,
it's too nice for you as well.
Well, yeah, I need a broken one.
There are plenty of broken ones out there.
Well, that's the problem. This is the thing I've said with this car, is that there are lots of very cheap 75s out there going for £1,000, £1,500, but they are cars that are project or on the way to the breakers.
Yes.
But there's another level of them which have been cherished, like this one, which are the sort of the £3,000 to £4,000 and the £4,000 to £5,000 with the ZT, which are the future classics.
Yeah.
And this is one of the lucky ones, and so is yours.
And I know this phrase is bandied about all of the time, and it seems to be attached to everything once it gets past a certain age. But I do think the 75, and in particular the ZT, I do think they are modern classics.
Absolutely,
I really do.
Absolutely, yeah, because they were mould breakers. They were massively significant for the company. They were historically significant in the motoring world as a whole, and they're beautiful design as well.
Yes.
So yeah, they tick every box going.
Yeah.
So there we go. The MG ZT was a lot more than just a warmed over body kitted 75. It was a significantly reworked and restyled car to make it something completely different for a new generation, and perhaps the last time that a company has sold two completely different cars aimed at completely different people from the same production line, perhaps alienating one of the other buying demographics at the same time. Let us know what you think in the comments. If you've enjoyed this, please hit like and subscribe, and go over and subscribe to Batch's channel,
Batch Reviews,
here on this here YouTube, and we'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.